G'day brothers and sisters, this is the other Paul, and I am joining you from my brand new-ish, few weeks old space. No longer am I in the middle of a main living area and kitchen, being an absolute eyesore with my desk and my library. No, I have a dedicated study room now, with a very beautiful, nice view out into the Australian land. Okay, I'm in the suburbs, so I can't say the bush, unfortunately. But yes, anyway, I am finally back to making content, and it is going to be regular. Starting with this very video right here. This is the first video in a regular series every week on Fridays in Australian time, where I will be commenting on news pertaining to the church and to Australian political issues, and particularly as they relate to the church. And as I just mentioned, it's going to be focused primarily in Australia. Maybe some massive international events if they happen, and if I consider them relevant to tackle, if many others aren't already doing that. So that's what's happening, and I'm calling it the Christendom Weekly. Best name I know. My naming conventions are absolutely spot on these days. I'm just the best at making names. I won't hide that. But yes, this will be happening every week with news commentary on church and political issues, primarily church. And that's what's happening. That's basically it. What the video coming up is right now. Do please remember to follow me on all my social media. So this would include YouTube, BitChute, Facebook, Gab, and Twitter, and as well my blog as well. You can follow me there. You can subscribe on an email. But especially, I believe Gab and BitChute will be the most important for you to follow because, again, as I've said in pretty much every single video I've made today, I do not expect to be here forever, given my not so friendly views to the zeitgeist. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Watch on and enjoy. So to start us off today, we have the recent New South Wales Government announcement that they will be giving back freedoms to the double vaccinated come the 70% fully vaccination mark. As you can see in this little section over here where they're live tracking people who are fully vaccinated versus those who are simply single vaccinated, whatever, with their first dose, and then the rest who simply aren't at all. Now, of course, for anyone with a basic sense of liberties, and not even just liberties, but just the very concept of self-governance and a limited jurisdiction of the state, this is of course an incredible insult, but it's nothing new given the past, well, dare I say actually really 2 years now plus of New South Wales government overt tyranny, with it obviously being more blatant in these past few months for around half a year now. But yeah, that's what's happening now. They recently announced this, what many people are calling Freedom Day, again, to add extra insult to injury, at which they will give certain freedoms, okay? So clearly we're not like the United States here, where we actually have a sense of innate freedoms that the government has no right over. No, they're giving us our freedoms back. And not to us, by the way, but to the fully vaccinated, per their arbitrary criteria, which is of course silly because, fully vaccinated do still spread the coof. They still do spread the coof. So of course it's entirely arbitrary, silly, but you can't expect a consistent worldview out of these secular overlords. And these are the freedoms that they're going to be giving back to us. So everything from being able to gather with friends and family, to even going out to the shops, to restaurants, to retail stores, to gyms, traveling within the state outside of our local government area, weddings, funerals, places of worship. I'll get back to that one especially. Going to football games at the stadium. And of course, masks will still be mandatory for the vast majority of places, so not much changes there for them. But of course, all of this definitely puts to rest the lie that many people, especially here in Australia, are liking to say, that no one's forcing you to get the vaccine. It's just that if you don't get it, you'll have certain consequences. Yeah, okay, that's a lie. This is force. So just to be able to have a normal life and not be a prisoner, because that is ultimately what they are. It's not even like a prison. We are prisoners right now by the state. But either way, most important here is the places of worship. So only if you're double vaccinated will the government allow people to attend places of worship. Otherwise, they will not allow it. They will attempt somehow to enforce that churches cannot accept single vaccinated people. And even then, there's still a rule of one person per 4 square meters and no singing, as if they can enforce that at all. But the mere fact that they're trying shows just how evil they are. Now, this here, as I mentioned in my recent stream with my friend Jeff on Agoy for Jesus, is a dividing line. That if you believe the state can regulate or ban even the gathering of the body of Christ, under any circumstance, then you're an enemy of Christ. And this more recent development is an even greater demonstration of that. And I've seen, it is actually shocking how many people online I have seen who call themselves Christians, and yet they actually support having a state-enforced vaccine passport, where if you don't have this passport, regardless of whether you have the virus or not, you could not have the passport and yet not have any COVID. You could even have the passport and have COVID and spread it to your other congregants, but that doesn't matter. If you don't have this certain pass given to you by the government, then you're not allowed to attend church. And there are people supporting that. People who call themselves Christians supporting that. And I outright, and this should absolutely become the case universally in the church, such people must be recognized as traitors. They are not Christians. They are enemies of Christ. There is no nuance here, no dilly-dallying, no attempt to just tone things down for the sake of discussion and dialogue and all that stuff. That stuff's over. All right, this is a state of cultural warfare right now. The dividing line has been drawn. If you believe the state has the right to do this, you're an enemy of Christ. Very easy. That's my opinion. You can disagree. Cool. But I think it's a great error. Either way, that's what's happening right now. But God willing, it seems that otherwise very normie church leaders are actually starting to come out and question this as well, because there's actually been a bit of a tussle between our health minister, Brad Hazzard, and in particular the local Catholic Archbishop of Sydney, Anthony Fisher. And Anthony Fisher has been saying that, hey, church is, as he says in this article over here, that church is not it's not a recreational thing. It is an essential service, using the government's own terminology, which of course, by the way, is totally arbitrary terminology. Something is essential regardless of whether the government says so. It is simply the government's way of being able to mentally, psychologically enforce compliance into people, because they say, oh, this isn't essential, therefore it's okay if we shut this down. Of course, that's a total lie. But yeah, either way, some ministers are starting to wake up to this, to oppose this, and some are even openly saying that, hey, we may have to be civilly disobedient. I mean, it's about flipping time. They could have done that already during this, approaching 6-month plus lockdown, where the body of Christ has not been allowed to attend at all. They could have done that earlier, but hey, you know what? We can't afford in this time to be such manic idealists that we just chop off the heads of anyone who makes an error. I think it's great that they are starting to, even if they did make the grave error before of complying, even if they claim it's voluntary, as this minister does here, but it is still great, nonetheless, that they are starting to wake up to it. They're starting to see that, hey, this is wrong, let's not go ahead with this. So there's a certain Anglican minister, Phil Colgan, who is saying, even if it is consistent and churches are treated the same as cinemas, I still question whether the government has the right to impose on churches something we don't accept, he said. Thank you. Finally, someone with a sense of jurisdictional boundaries of the powers. A basic concept lost on, dare I say, most Christians I have ever encountered, almost all of them, really. I think it is really, quoting the minister again, I think it's really important to note that all our acceptance of government limitations to this day I consider to have been voluntary, questionable, whatever, that the government doesn't have the right to forbid people meeting as Christians, and we have chosen to accept and comply, rightly in my view. That's a grave error, but we'll overlook that for now. But there might come a time, like with the vaccine passport for me, where I would say the government requires that, but we are now going to stand up and say no, even though it is consistent with what they're requiring for cinemas and so forth. So finally, we're getting a little bit, and this is the Sydney Morning Herald, right? This is not a right-wing paper. This is a very mainstream media paper. They're not the worst, but their opinion articles are, of course, typical mainstream trash. But the fact that they're like just displaying these statements by pastors, oh boy, that's some good spicy stuff right there. I like that content. But yeah, it's showing that even people we may have considered to be very normie and have done grave error, like I believe this pastor had, given that he says he's complied with lockdowns before, it's showing that even they're starting to question, well, hang on, is this right? Does the government really have the right to do this? And they're starting to say that, no, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. And Anthony Fisher himself, Catholic Archbishop, he himself has said, well, exactly that. In other areas, not just this article, but he's been a bit more explicit that this is not right, that we cannot deny the unvaccinated. And that's actually a very serious thing, because as far as I'm aware, like in the Catholic Church, in Catholic canon law, and a bunch of my friends have stated this as well, who are like very rad trad Catholics, and I had to confirm it. But Catholic canon law does not allow the turning away of congregants. Like, it is literally against the, as they call it, the mission of the church, and against canon law for them to turn away congregants. So now there is a rock and a hard place moment about to happen with the 70% opening up. When churches will actually be happening, including Catholic churches, and then an unvaxxed person comes up to them and say, hey, I wish to attend, they are obligated by their very faith, by the very Catholic faith, to accept them. And that's going to put them perfectly at odds with government. And that's going to be very, very interesting to watch. And I hope I'll be able to cover that. But on this issue, that's the gist that you got to know. It's shocking, it's evil, it's tyrannical, but it's our reality right now. And yeah, that's this part of the news. Habibi, Zata. Love the stuff. Now, another recent happening has been the Ezekiel Declaration, and this is a very, very significant declaration with thousands of signatures by church leaders and congregants here in Australia that is basically saying, no, we don't want vaccine passports, do not do it, this is against the faith. Particularly with respect to church, two issues, to personal conscience with respect to medical decisions and to church attendance. And they make those points very nicely, very succinctly, very strongly, I might add. Not as strongly worded as I personally would have liked. I'm a bit more of on the aggressive front, but hey, it does the job very well. And as one may expect, it has caught some flack from the liberal Christians among us, especially with the equivalent, our equivalent to Christianity Today, Eternity News, and they have some lots of good things to say. But before we get to there, read this Ezekiel Declaration for yourself. It is good stuff, and it's important because once I point you to articles that are basically slandering people who support the Ezekiel Declaration and the authors of the Declaration itself, you want to know what the Declaration is actually saying, because they rely, these other two people up here, I'm not going to be giving a full response now. To one of them, I am giving a full response. I'll get to that in a second. But basically, they rely on people to just to accept their framing of the argument, their framing of the situation, in order to twist and contort everything that the Declaration says into being the worst thing since Hitler. And because of that, they're able to fool a lot of people, as you can see in their comment sections in Eternity News on Facebook, who actually believe them, unfortunately, and say, "Oh, how dare these people? They want to kill grandma. They don't love their neighbor, and all that bullcrap." But yes, so read this Declaration for yourself. It's good stuff. So you're reading it now? Okay, good. Now we can move on. Because there's these articles here, one by Tim Costello and one by a Professor Patrick Parkinson, both at this rag that likes to call itself Christian journalism called Eternity News. And I will be fair, they do sometimes push opposing opinions, but they do like to put a distance between themselves and them. As you can probably, if you look up the defense, the Ezekiel Declaration authors did give a defense of their declaration to Eternity News, and Eternity News posted it, but they kind of put a separation between themselves and the authors in their defense. So, and you can see that by reading it, but whatever, I'll let you do that yourself. And read through these articles too, and having read through the Ezekiel Declaration just before, you will notice how shockingly dishonest, and in my opinion, just how much these two, primarily Tim Costello, just straight up absolute liars, especially lying by omission. And these are key statements right here by both of these authors, actually, that are just flat out lies, because they rely on abusive language, basically, and ignorance of the reader. So, what they both say, this is published in September 1st, okay? So remember, at this point, this is not too long ago, and at this point, there were already mandates existing for various lines of work here in New South Wales, here in Australia, in various places as well, but especially in New South Wales. Various lines of work have to be double vaccinated, all right? I have friends who are construction workers, they have to be double vaccinated just to be able to get back to work, all right? So keep that in mind. At this stage, no one in government is mandating vaccinations, as they accept that there are both moral and religious objections to such a mandate. Okay, on the face of it, that is a lie. That is a bald-faced lie. And some people in the comments section below this, embedded in the site, they're actually stating that too. But of course, when you think deeper about it, they're relying on a very, very technical and dishonest definition of this. That when they say no one's mandating it, they mean that you're not getting charged for refusing to get vaccinated at all. And of course, that is technically true. But what does that mean? That means absolutely nothing, because there are many people in many lines of work, myself included. I'm not in teaching work right now, but I will be precluded from going for teaching work because I, on principle, don't want to get the needle. But also my teaching line of work, which I want to go into by November 8th when they get back into school, they have to be double vaccinated. So yes, I will be affected. This is effectively a mandate for me, and it is for many other careers out there right now, including construction workers, including, I believe, healthcare workers as well, and I think some others. But yes, so this is an actual lie, but he relies on a very narrow definition, as I said, that technically people aren't being charged merely for refusing it, and of course, that does not matter, because for many people, that is effectively what is happening. If you do not get vaccinated, you will lose your livelihood. You won't be able to support yourself. You won't be able to support your family. Oh, but you can maybe go onto the welfare net, the very nice welfare net, so you can become dependent on us. How convenient. Very, very convenient, huh? So this is a very, very bald-faced lie by omission, and it's repeated by this otherwise more sophisticated Professor Patrick Parkinson when he says, "No one has been compelled to be vaccinated in Australia, and no one will be. It is a fundamental legal principle that adult patients must give an informed consent to invasions of bodily integrity, except in a medical emergency, for example, where the patient is unconscious after a car accident, so on and so forth." And he straight up acknowledges in an indirect way what he means by mandate. He means that they're not putting a gun to your head to get vaccinated now, and which of course is pathetic. That does not matter, because for many people in many careers, that is effectively what is happening. If you want to have a livelihood, you have to get vaccinated. Now, the author does acknowledge this at some point throughout this article, that the government has, in his view, certain rights to take away certain privileges on the grounds of health concerns. And of course, this man is a law professor, and as I'll be noting in my much longer blog response, which will effectively cover similar and identical points in Tim Costello's article as well, which is even worse than this, I'll be noting how, as a law professor, he definitely knows how to play with language. He definitely knows how to manipulate framing, and as a result, to manipulate the minds of the readers and to bring them onto a certain position that actually totally distorts what's the reality. So yeah, that's just, I want to make sure that this Christendom Weekly thing, yes, plenty of honest commentary on myself as well, but I want to make sure that this is first and foremost just showing what's happening. There is this Ezekiel Declaration right here against government vaccine mandates, but there are very milquetoast, dare I say, slanderous Christians who are speaking against it. They both address it directly here. Tim Costello more directly, but also this Professor Patrick Parkinson here. Again, I'm addressing him myself in a blog post. But yeah, that's basically the gist of this. That there is Ezekiel Declaration. It is great. It is fantastic. And there are people who call themselves Christians who lie about it, who manipulate framing. If you want to read these entire articles yourselves, I'll have them linked. Yeah, and it just shows the state of the church here in Australia. And do please take a look at the comments in Under Eternity News Facebook post there. It's just shocking. It shows the absolute state of Christianity here in Australia. It's a very, very, very bad state. And yeah, that's about it. First episode of the Christendom Weekly. I know, very, very rough, very unrefined. I'm hoping maybe next time I'll have something a little bit more structured. Maybe just start with just the proper stating what's happened, basic rundown of all that, and then give my commentary, rather than go with a form of Targum approach where I have them both just muddled in together at the same time. Because yeah, it's a bit of a rough cut. These are more or less raw thoughts on myself, although I do have a couple of notes giving me some basic guidance. So maybe I'll go a little bit more in depth with that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm hoping this was at least somewhat informative, especially for non-Australians out there. Be blessed, pray for us, and this has been the Christendom Weekly, the very first episode. Oh yes, catch me tomorrow. If you're watching this right now, catch me tomorrow. I'm starting my Minecraft stream series as well upon this block. I know, again, naming conventions, I'm the best of them. So yes, do catch me there. Catch me in the live chat. It's going to be great, and that's going to be weekly as well, just after the Christendom Weeklies, the next day after. So anyway, God bless. You have a good day.